The alarm on the diplomatic deck screamed before I even had time to stand up, and every eye in the room turned toward the doors that were not supposed to open for another hour. My name is Ethan Cole, and I was the only human on a station built for 1,000 different species, most of whom thought my kind was soft, sentimental, and far too attached to animals to be trusted with anything important. I had heard it whispered in hallways and said outright in meetings. Humans cried over creatures that could not understand them. Back humans kept beasts close because they were too weak to stand alone. I never argued. I let them believe what they wanted, because the truth was walking beside me every single day, calm and quiet, waiting for a moment nobody expected. That moment came 3 weeks after I brought Talis onto the station, and it came without warning. Talis was not a small animal. He stood taller than most of the diplomats when he rose on his back legs, with a chest like a drum and paws that could crush stone without much effort. He had been given to me as a support companion, something the coalition allowed under strict rules, mostly because they believed it was harmless. A grown man needing comfort from an oversized bear seemed, to them, like proof that humans had never really grown up. They laughed when the transport crate opened and he stepped out. They stopped laughing very quickly once they understood what he actually was. On the morning everything changed, I was standing near the back wall of the grand meeting hall, acting as an interpreter for a treaty discussion between the Coalition Council and a group called the Cressian Remnant. It was supposed to be the safest room on the entire station. Weapons were banned. Scanners checked every visitor twice. Nobody was allowed inside without full clearance. I was there because my role required it, not because anyone expected me to matter. Talis lay near my feet, half asleep, the way he always did in these long, boring sessions filled with careful words and slow negotiations. Then one of the Cressian guards moved. It happened fast, faster than anyone in that room could process. A hidden weapon, grown from bone and undetectable by our sensors, appeared in his hand aimed toward Cordes, a Vashtar official sitting only a few steps away. Cordes had mocked me more than once for keeping Talis close, calling it a strange human habit that proved we had never evolved past our need for comfort. In that instant, none of that mattered. Talis moved before I even understood what I was seeing. He crossed the space between us and Cordes in less than 2 seconds, faster than something his size should have been able to move. He did not wait for a command. He did not need one. Whatever bond existed between us had already told him everything he needed to know the moment danger appeared, long before my own mind had caught up with the threat. He placed himself directly between the guard and Cordes, taking the strike meant for someone else across his massive shoulder instead. The room went completely silent. Security rushed in seconds later, pulling the guard away and locking down the hall, but by then, it was already over. Talis stood calm, breathing steady, a shallow mark across his shoulder that would heal within days. Cordes sat frozen in his chair, all 4 of his eyes locked onto the animal that had just placed itself between him and harm, without a single moment of hesitation. Nobody in that room was laughing anymore. What followed in the days after was strange to watch. Diplomats who once avoided me in the hallways began stopping to ask questions. Officers who used to whisper insults about weak humans and their pets suddenly wanted to understand how the bond worked. Cordes himself came to find me on the observation deck one evening, standing quietly beside the viewport while ships drifted past in long lines of light. He asked me how an animal could care about someone who was not even its handler. I told him the truth. Talis did not separate the people I cared about from the people I loved most. If someone mattered to me, even a difficult, argumentative official who spent months mocking my choices, then that person mattered to him too. It was not about training or commands. It was about connection, something faster and older than any rule coalition scientists had ever tried to measure. Cordes did not answer right away. He watched Talis resting nearby, breathing slow and steady, completely unaware that his simple act of loyalty had changed the way an entire station viewed my species. A week later, another test came. though not one anyone expected. A malfunction in the lower engineering deck caused a pressure failure that threatened to seal off an entire section of the station, trapping several workers inside a corridor that was rapidly losing air. The emergency systems struggled to respond fast enough, and the automated doors that were supposed to protect the workers jammed halfway, leaving a narrow gap too small for most rescue teams to reach through in time. I was near the lower decks when the alert came through, and Talis was with me, as always. Without thinking twice, I moved toward the emergency corridor, guided by instinct rather than any clear plan. The gap in the door was too small for security teams in full gear, but Talis, powerful and quick despite his size, forced his way through the space, pushing the broken mechanism just far enough for me to slip in behind him. Inside, 3 engineers were trapped against a wall, coughing from the thinning air, unable to reach the emergency lever that would reset the pressure seal. Talis reached it first, using his weight and strength to pull the stuck mechanism back into place, while I guided the workers toward the widened gap in the door. Within moments, the pressure stabilized, and the corridor was safe again. The engineers who walked out that day did not care what species Talis belonged to, or what species I did. They only cared that they were alive, thanks to an animal that most of the station had once treated as a joke. News of the incident spread quickly, and for the first time since I had arrived, people began speaking about humans differently. Instead of calling us weak for our bonds with animals, some officials started asking whether other species might benefit from similar partnerships. The very thing that had once been mocked as a flaw was now being studied as a possible strength, something worth understanding rather than dismissing. Cordes visited me one final time before his assignment on the station ended. He told me that his people had spent thousands of years building machines and systems designed to detect danger before it happened, yet none of it had worked as quickly as the instinct shared between a man and his bonded animal. He admitted that what he once saw as dependency was actually something far more powerful, a connection built on trust that could react faster than fear itself. I did not have a grand answer for him. I simply told him that humans never chose to depend on animals because we were weak. We chose it because somewhere in our long history, someone realized that love moving between 2 living beings could travel faster than any command, any weapon, or any warning system ever built. That bond was not a flaw to grow out of. It was something worth carrying forward, no matter how advanced any species became. Talis rested quietly beside me that evening, unaware of the conversation happening above him, unaware that his simple presence had reshaped an entire station's understanding of my kind. Outside the viewport, ships continued their slow journey through the dark, carrying trade, treaties, and travelers from 100 different worlds. For the first time since I arrived, nobody looked at me with pity or mockery. They looked at Talis with something closer to respect, and at me with quiet curiosity, wondering what else humanity had learned to build that no scanner or sensor could ever fully explain. As the lights dimmed for the night cycle, I placed my hand on Talis's head, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing beneath my palm. Whatever challenges waited ahead, I knew we would face them together, the way we always had, and the way species across the galaxy were only just beginning to understand.